KTLO, are you curious? Because I'm a little curious.
We are
Um,
live.
I'm gonna be a lot curious, but I'm a little curious. I think that's the topic for today. It is KTLO, 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 keeping the learning on. Friday. Here we are yet again, episode 46. We are rapidly approaching that 1 year mark, and it is absolutely astounding. And here we are, the core four are here and ready, and we have guests awaiting, and we'll be with them momentarily. The curiosity factor is today's topic. Does that make you, what's the word for it? Curious?
I'm really curious where we're going to go with this.
Very curious where we're going to go for this. And, but here we are. Here's the core four: Patty Blackstad, Greg Sanker, Simone Jo Moore, and moi. And we'll start off by having a little discussion. We'll bring some guests in. And in our third season, as we call the divisions of this little conversation, ongoing conversation. Someone described it to me yesterday, an ongoing conversation. I like that. Is season three's tactic, as it were, is to have an interviewer for the day. And today's interviewer is, fortunately or unfortunately, as the case may be, Greg Sanker. And does that make you curious as to how he's going to do? So we'll just turn it over to Greg and see how that works.
Good evening, everybody.
Greg.
Well, so we talk about curiosity, and everybody is curious, or at least we start out curious. Ever known a kid that wasn't curious, been around a 6-year-old? They ask her like all kinds of bizarre questions. Here's some that I found on the internet. Hey, which is faster, fire or dust? I mean, that's a great question, right? And so a kid that's looking at a baby says, hey, do they know that they're alive yet? These are intriguing questions. Like, why can't I see my eyes? It's like, how do I know that I'm real and not just a dream of somebody else? I mean, that's pretty deep philosophical thought, but kids ask these kind of questions, and somewhere along the way, we kind of stop asking questions, or we stop being so curious, or we learn that maybe some level of curiosity isn't exactly appreciated. But Roy, over to you to get things rolling. It's like, what are the benefits, fringe benefits, if you will? I go, how do we benefit from being curious?
Well, some of the fringe benefits, I think, are that curiosity means that you're really interested in learning stuff, right? So some of the fringe benefits are that you are constantly learning, and if you're curious and you're asking questions and you're taking training and you're reading books and you're doing all the things that curious people do, chances are that's going to work out for you. You're going to advance in your career. You're going to get noticed because you're asking those questions, sometimes the difficult ones. Greg, were you? Oh, see, that was going to be an interesting question, but I decided not to go there.
Yeah, because you
anyway,
don't. I was going to say you don't want to be too curious, right? You got to freak people out, right?
Well, I don't know.
You can easily freak people out.
I'm pretty curious, though, as to, when you're talking about noticing stuff, who's in the waiting room?
I'm curious who's in the waiting room.
We have Dee Burgoyne. We have Daniel Breston. We have Kathy Belboon. And we have Orion Mendez. So we've got a good group here today.
Should we take a vote? Morning, all.
Oh, a vote on what?
A vote on what? Yeah.
Yeah, a vote on what? Their curiousness?
I started saying that, and I looked down at Daniel, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to stop right there.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. You're joining us when we started asking curious questions, and I'm your questioner today. But I'm going to turn over. There's Orion. Welcome. I'm going to turn over to Patty because I think that you just notice that some people are known for being curious and others aren't. So why are some people more curious than others, or maybe different levels of being curious in different contexts or situations? Why do you think, Patty?
Well, interesting that you called yourself the questioner, not interrogator, which is good. Um, so, I think that there is a certain capacity for fear that enters our world, but I love, love, love the guy. He passed away this year. His name is Sir Ken Robinson, who's a British author, speaker, international advisor on education and the arts. And he has 3 core quotes that really drive home the importance of not quashing curiosity in children, right? Curiosity is the engine of achievement. Curiosity and creativity are the hallmarks of human intelligence. And if teachers can keep the flame of curiosity beaming in children, then pretty much everything else will follow after that. There's a woman by the name of Emily Grassley, and this is so cool. When I was doing a little snooping on curiosity online, I ran across a TED Talk she did. She's the former chief curiosity correspondent with the Field Museum. She now calls herself professionally curious and has hosted a show on PBS. But she said, "You cannot be curious about something if you don't know it exists." And from the leadership side, that's a pretty big statement. You cannot be curious about something if you don't know it exists, right? So explorers and seekers, early curiosity, built fire, tools, etc. Then people got curious with curiosities, the rich, the elite. They started collecting these things that eventually worked into becoming museums, straight out of, dinner table conversations. There's emotional curiosity, but I think the one that Simone spends a lot of time on, because she is a creative, is wonder curiosity. You're not curious until you want to know something through discovery and exploration, and she does that in her art. A fellow by the name of Daniel Berlin really identified levels of stimulation that lead us to curiosity. So to answer your question about why are some and some not curious, there's a balance or a level of stimulation that kind of grabs curiosity. One is novelty, right? It's new, it's cool, it's different. Uncertainty, what's going to happen? And then conflict. I don't understand. And I think that people are externally stimulated by something to activate the arousal of curiosity. But it's interesting because a colleague of his, H.I.D. in 1982 said, yeah, but hold on a minute, we can divide this into a zone of curiosity. What does that look like? So there's this relaxation, this unmotivated disinterest, comatose. And then there's this zone of anxiety where you avoid or defend against being curious. Nope, can't, nope, ears are plugged. And then the zone of curiosity sits somewhere in the middle, which really lines up with exploration, excitement, interest. So when you're defensive, disinterested, inefficient, curiosity kind of goes away and the anxiety increases. When you're unmotivated, disinterested, or inefficient, you just don't give a darn, right? There are so many different levels, but it really is the environment around what stimulates curiosity, and you can create that in yourself.
So that just kind of triggered the thought in my mind is I've been in company environments where it was all just, it's like I was in one organization once where every Thursday, the major web applications, external facing web applications, would go down at a certain time of day. And after 3 weeks, I was the new guy, right? And after 3 weeks, I'm like, who's working this? And they're going, what do you mean? I said, well, doesn't it seem odd that every Thursday at this time that your major applications that are impacting your customers just like don't exist? They're like, never really thought about it. And so I you know what I did? I triggered let's do a root cause analysis. Let's do a problem. Let's get all of our smart people in a room. Let's see if we can figure it out. It turns out we did actually. we figured it out, and it was really fascinating what we learned. But we did that because there was a curiosity factor that didn't exist, and it impact customers were impacted, right? So, Roy, what typifies a culture or an organizational culture where where curiosity isn't valued? What kind of things do you hear? How would you recognize a non-curious culture?
I have worked in a non-curious culture where someone asked me a question and I said, well, I think, and the boss said, you don't get paid to think.
Ooh, you actually heard that word from a boss?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
You don't get paid to think. And so that is a good indicator that you live in a non-curious culture.
Yeah.
And another one, of course, is the worst words ever heard in business, and everybody knows this one. That's the way we've always done it. We don't care if you have a new idea. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way we're always going to do it, and that's the way it is. So those are two big indicators that you live in a culture that isn't curious. But even more important, I think, is whether or not your culture values curiosity. It may not be itself a culture that's curious, but to value individuals' curiosity is pretty cool, and that will lead eventually, I think, to a curious culture.
So that actually kind of resonates with the quick example that I gave. Is in that culture, what I learned was compliance with policy and procedure was vastly more important than just about anything else, any kind of a meaningful thing that we normally associate with organizations. That's what was valued. It's like we followed the process, right? But it produced lousy results or no results at all, right? It doesn't matter. We followed the process. It was shocking to me. Simone,
Let us tell you who you are.
Exactly. We will, if we wanted you to have a personality, one would be issued to you. All right. So just get that through your mind right now. Simone, you're dying over there. Come off of mute and tell us how your sense of curiosity has shifted over time.
Oh, I'm just having a giggle behind the scenes because, as Roy was saying, you're not paid to think. And then you come out and say, but it wasn't issued to you. And of course, my first thought, being an ex-soldier, it didn't come out of the Q store, so you don't get it. And it used to be, if the sergeant said to you, jump, it was like, this is what my father taught me, ex-World War II vet, said, well, the first question you have to ask is say, yes, how high and when do I come down? So there was no curiosity about it. It was just do. Sorry, you had me there. So in all my, the get to know you parts that you have in your presentations or when you're in the workshop and they say, oh, who are you? I use a favorite Albert Einstein quote that I have, which is, I'm neither clever nor specially gifted. I'm just very, very curious. And people talk about insatiable curiosity, but it's actually not insatiable. I've been learning this recently. It's more about satiable curiosity. So it means I will get to the answer. Because curiosity, and as Patty, as you pointed out, it's an internal mechanism. It's actually internal to the person. You can't apply curiosity to an external state because that's when we do all the methods, the questioning, this, that, and the other. It's a mechanism that gets us out of, and Patty said, if I give a damn about it. And that's actually what we call aporia. So that's where we have a feeling of being at a loss, or if we're in feeling of doubt or puzzlement, that's part of that driver that causes us to ask the questions. And favorite stories, think of Alice in Wonderland. The story of the little girl who chases the rabbit down a hole, these fantastical creatures and strange happenings, and all of that replaces logic. Nothing's quite as it seems. And I loved living in those fantasy worlds because it enabled me to cope with the real stuff happening out there. And if I could live in some of my books and keep delving deeper, I would so do that in some of those books. But I also wanted to be things like marine biologist, then an architect, then an astrophysicist and a metaphysicist. And because in the end, really, it was like, I'm going to be very Irish here, how the feck does it all work? And why do we do what we do? And T.S. Eliot once said, nothing pleases people more than to go on thinking that what they've always thought, but at the same time, they imagine that they're thinking something new and daring. You know, it's that combination of the advantage of having that security blanket, but delighting in the adventure. So this is where I think the curiosity shifts. You know, how did it shift? But there's got to be more to it than just dreaming in the book. It's keeping pushing the boundaries. It's asking the tough questions. It's saying things like, you know, God, is this all there is? I didn't come this far to only come this far. You know, I want to stand on the edge of the planet and be able to look to those other worlds and then stand on the edge of the next one. You know, that to me is where it's really at.
So there is a balance here that I want to interject, right? So you can't run a business on pure curiosity, of course, unless that's your business. But at some point, you've got to stop thinking and start doing, or temper your thinking or your creativity. You know, I've seen people who never deliver something because they always have another idea. Oh, I want to change this. Oh, I need to add that. Oh, this is not complete. Oh, I don't want to show it to you yet because it's not. And you spend all your time being curious about how you could fit it. At some point, we've got to deliver a product or a service to our customers. Roy, what have you seen around positive and negative types of curiosity?
Well, positive curiosity, I think, is what we generally think about, and it's wanting to know more. It's searching after the next thing or looking deeper into things. Negative curiosity, to my way of thinking, it would be going and exploring things or asking questions about people and then using the information against them,
okay. Yeah,
or to their detriment, or gathering lots of information from your organization so you can leave and go take it somewhere else with you. You know, having an ulterior motive, I think, is probably what I would call negative curiosity. But you know, most curiosity is positive. When we think about curiosity, most of it is positive, and it's the drive to know more. And I don't know, have I ever experienced curiosity? Oh yeah, I think I've had multiple people describe me as a sponge. I just
I'd say that
love
applies to
learning.
you. Yeah. You're also a Renaissance man. You're deeply interested in a very broad array of things. So you're both.
If you squeeze Roy, the most amazing things come out.
I don't know if I want to squeeze Roy. I'm just going to be honest here.
It's
Wow.
the sponge thing. What can I say?
Oh, somebody save me, Patty. Patty.
Okay, I'm jumping in. I'm going to change the track.
You know, I kind of where I wanted to do was shift it kind of to a more strategic level. So what do we do about that? So if I'm an executive leader, what is my role with regard to curiosity? Because it applies to both myself and those over whom I influence, right? So how does it apply to me?
Well, I haven't taken tally marks for every time Roy has said management by walking around, but probably in the hundreds, maybe thousands. Listen, the first thing is to be a curious leader. In order to truly understand what you have to ask questions about, first you have to admit, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I am not the guy who knows the answer, the girl or whoever you are. It's not me. It's these people with knowledge. Then you need to seek to understand. But like the quote said earlier, right? We can't be curious about something if we don't know it exists. So you've got to get around that place and really start asking about what's there now. And then the third one would be dropping the judgment. My goodness, how you ask questions matters, right? So drop the judge, pick up the learner. Instead of who's to blame, where am I responsible here and what can I do to help you? Instead of how can I control this, ask the question, what are my choices? Instead of why bother, it's what's possible. There's a reframe in how you approach the people around you as a leader and what you can do as a leader, and especially executive leaders. They are responsible for the performance to the board. And if they do not know enough, ask enough, and are not curious enough, they're actually irresponsible to the board because they are not helping people perform better. So walk around, listen, observe, be quiet. Let people have conversations with you instead of you having conversations with them. Nurture relationships with open listening. Then be willing everywhere in your world, if you want to increase curiosity, enter unfamiliar territory, go somewhere new, see different people, experience different things, challenge your biases by actually putting yourself in experiences that force you to understand a different idea, a different thought. And ask people this question: what might I not know about this? Because there is a lot packed into that. What might I not know about this? And they're itching to tell you, but they're waiting for you to ask.
So you describe a situation where it's going to be really tough for me to be the smartest guy and prove it to everybody around if I put myself constantly in situations where it's like, I don't know.
Well, the first thing you have to understand is your job is not to be the smartest guy in the room. That's the deal, right? That's not your job. Your job is to elicit performance to get the mission done. And the only way you elicit performance is if you remain curious and allow those smart people to inform your decisions.
So I think you're drifting off, and Patty, you and I are going to have to go offline on this one, but you're drifting into true leadership and what the role of leadership in an organization is.
How dare I?
Because, yeah, I mean, I'm curious why you would go to that insane place, right? But in organizations, like if your ego drives you, if your need to step up the ladder and step on other people to get there, you're not going to be curious about what they think. All you care about is what you think, right? So I think, Simone, I have to come to you because everybody who's listening to this, which is my mother and 3 other people, but everybody who's listening to this is waiting for me to say, did curiosity really kill the cat? I mean, is that really true? Is that what happened there?
This is when we start to talk about Schrodinger. Don't go there. I mean, I do like the fact that one of my favorite movies is Men in Black. There's so many fun things in that movie. But one of the things that Agent K says is, you know what? I live a happy life by not asking questions I don't want to have the answer to. And I think that's really interesting because that whole curiosity killed the cat. I mean, all the phrases that we've had throughout any language are always there to teach us something, right? So that particular phrase was there to warn us of the dangers of, let's say, unnecessary investigation or experimentation. The original form of it, though, a lot of people don't realize this. The original form is not curiosity killed the cat, but care killed the cat. Because it was about the worry or the sorrow for others that we had that could lead to the danger of misfortune because we were so involved with them that we got ourselves into the pickle. And it goes back as far as Shakespeare. In 1598, in Every Man in His Humour, that's you, Greg, you're always every man in his humour, and even Helter Skelter by Ben Jonson, where we hang sorrow, care will kill a cat, up tails all and pox on the hangman. That's how old it is. So there's one of my favourite Shakespeare's, though, is Much Ado About Nothing. All that fuss and frill that we have. And it says, what courage, man, what thou care, kill the cat. Thou hast metal enough in thee to kill care. So part of that says that the curiosity factor for me is how much business has actually used and abused the phrase, kill the care factor. Think about it. Kill the care factor. If you kill the emotions when you walk through that front door, we're not going to be all fussy and bothered. We're going to be able to do what we need to do. And part of I realize what it is they smother curiosity because they don't want to reveal the problems. You talked about that earlier. They don't want to reveal their difficulties, or perhaps what they see is the employee knowing more than they should. The need to know environment. So the thing was, though, is even in my army days, which is probably why I fell into the whole comms and intelligence and stuff, is because, you know, the need to know environment, but I wanted to keep pushing the boundaries. I kept wanting to find out the hows and the whys of stuff. And even in an Irish newspaper back in the 1800s, they say curiosity killed a cat once. So this whole 9 lives thing was, well, what we haven't always understood is that curiosity and courage are actually intertwined in a very deep way. They added to the saying that curiosity might have killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. So if we've satisfied our curiosity, we keep coming back to something else, we can actually continue on the next part of our journey because we've satisfied that. But remember, Greg, you only get 9 chances. Today's challenge is really for businesses to have far more transparency and accountability, right? Within the context, because I can still argue there's still a line of need to know, which is our fail-safe line. I still believe that there in circumstances that exist, but it's always arguable. But curiosity definitely has a major part to play in our courage in terms of transparency and accountability and everything else.
So I want to turn to our guests, because I don't know if you guys can see it on the recording, but we have some vehement emotional reactions or some reactions to it. But since Orion has not been here for a couple of times, I'm going to take it upon myself to pick on her first. Do you think, Orion, that modern organizations actually value curiosity in practical, real terms? Like, is it actually true, or do we pay lip service to it?
I think that the modern organizations are now starting to recognize the value in problem solving, the value of the human element in, you know, in their assets, if you want to call it that. You know, you can get a computer to automate and do the same processes quicker. You can get all of that stuff built. But what you can't get is the way we are creative as humans. I remember once reading about a chess player, and when he was put under extreme pressure, he came up with a move that had never been seen before. And I think the ability of humans to connect random ideas into a string of something new, it makes me think of the Johari window, you know, in the HR Johari window, where you've got the blind spot, the unknown, the facade. These are areas where there's an element of the unknown, and only ways that you can move them into your level of mastery is by exploring it. And that can only happen through curiosity. So what businesses care for today? Growth, bottom line, keeping people happy, to reduce attrition. That's all metrics based. But they're realizing that to achieve that level of performance, they really need to be asking the right questions. They need to be connecting the right ideas, observing how all these things come to be. That curiosity is now seen as a desirable skill. So I think the world is definitely turning on itself in that regard.
So if that's true, I'm going to go over to Dee, because she's been in multiple organizations in a strategic role. Can we teach curiosity? Can people be taught that? Can organizations actually develop it in people and in the organization?
Oh.
We lost your camera, Dee.
Oh.
But I hear you.
Here I am.
There you are.
I believe that going back to, given that we're born curious, and that is what drives our most rich and bountiful learning and growth period, our early years, what sometimes squashes curiosity is the consequences of it, the message that we get. If you interact with a little child, what's the question they ask you over and over and over, no matter what the answer is you give them, is why? And why? Part of it, I think, is that they want to continue the conversation and interact with you, and that's the only way they know how. But in organizations, I think that organizations are looking for ways to access more of what's called discretionary effort, what people can bring to work. Maybe they're bringing 80% and they bring 20% more. If each person brings 20% more, that's 5 people is one full another person. So if you can access that curiosity, and the way to do that is by finding a way to make the answer personal to the individual. If there's an answer that will matter to that person in some way, then they will find that answer out. Come hell or high water, they'll work on it. And I think that's what we need to do with today's people. Is that does require, this is my last point, that does require, going back to some of the other conversations you've had, a safe, inclusive environment where people can share and ask why, and not be afraid that that people don't want to hear the answer if they find it. But it's about creating an environment where people can be curious.
You see what she did there? She brought psychological safety back into the conversation as well. You guys are just killing me here, right? Kathy, you responded rather sharply to my question about, let's teach people to be curious. Let's have a curiosity webinar or something. Let's teach you how to be curious. Why did you react so strongly to that?
Well, I did because I don't think you can literally sit down and have a training session on here's how you're going to be curious. And if, as Dee says, if all people are born curious, shame on the parents who squash that. I think it starts there. And if it gets lost along the way, I think what we can do is develop it. We can de-school it. We can develop it. We can have the right environment. We can promote it, model it, reward it, focus on the questions instead of the answers. We can have other people within our teams that are curious people, let them lead, don't have it all be from us. And I would say, ideally hire, team people that get promoted to team leads, have them be curious, because then when they're working across departments with product management or, our development partners, is they need to be curious. So in the meetings, they start to learn, they crave those answers. They crave the understanding with which then to go back and solve the problem. And when they solve problems, that is self-reward for their curiosity. But to Simone, I have to say something. You keep talking about killing the cat. Do you know there's a song in America that says, after the cat is killed, it starts with, but the cat came back.
Yeah.
He just couldn't stay away.
Away. Yeah, I know.
So you
And
can kill it. But
yeah,
those of us that are curious, we're going to keep coming back. Because
exactly.
we're hungry for it, and that, we talk about as leaders, the forever learners and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a gift that we are born with. Our parents encouraged it. And if they squashed it, we found it and we flourished. And we are the ones that walk around and listen. I love that one. Walk around and listen to others and be curious about everything. And, that's where the great ideas come up. We talk about improvements are a million little things. They're not big, grandiose ideas, but through curiosity, improving things in the department, troubleshooting better, helping customers better is all going to evolve from how the development program we put in place and efforts.
So I'm just going to put this plug in, right? So while Kathy was talking, if you were trying to take notes, you don't need to, because in 2022, you'll be able to read it in her book. Just mark my words, we're going to get back to that, right? Daniel, you've been in senior roles, right? So tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly about curiosity on your team, within the organization, and in corporations or in organizations.
Just like all the other stuff that we've talked about so far in this series for this year, it takes two to be curious. You have to be willing to ask the question, and you have to be willing to hear the answer. And then you have to be willing to ask a question on the answer. And both of you have to be willing to exchange information. So in Lean, we have a concept of 5 whys, which people mistakenly believe is a problem-solving root cause analysis technique. And what I've been taught is that it's a way for individuals to learn how to talk to each other in such a way that they can both explore safely something that they want to talk about, really. You know, why this and why that, and why, if we do that, would, you know, those are all questions that encourage people to have a conversation, to have people change from conversation to collaboration, and to have people change from collaboration to mutual respect, knowledge learning, going out and problem solving or trying something or experimentation. And I believe that if you have quote unquote agile in your organization, pick any of the 47 flavors, or DevOps, or ITO, or ITSM, you know, all of those things encourage learning and encourage curiosity. You have to be curious to be able to, you know, figure out a way to do stuff.
And I think one of the roadblocks, and I want to come back to you, Daniel, and talk a little bit more about what you're currently doing now with organizations, because I think you're unlocking doors in organizations. I think that's some of what you're doing.
No, I think they're locking doors to keep me out.
You and me both, buddy. No, it's the kind of questions that you ask like that. You made a really important point. You've got to both be willing to ask the question, but you have to be willing to answer them or listen to the answers as well. And that's really important. Orion, why are people self-conscious about asking good questions or being curious? Why is that something that we're self-conscious about?
I'm not, I don't fall into that category at all. I have, it's, quite often I get said that I'm quite forthright and direct, and it's because I lack fear when it comes to wanting to know the answer. I have a curiosity that has been nurtured in me from childhood throughout my whole life, and it makes me always try to look for different perspectives, try and understand where the people are coming from. But what I have observed with people who don't ask questions is quite often they're afraid. They're afraid of looking stupid. If I ask a question, I don't know the answer, I'm going to look like I don't know, I've not researched it, I should know this stuff. But what they don't realize is that we all just have, you know, a portion of knowledge which is this big, and everybody else has a similar sized portion of knowledge. And the way that you can expand your portion of knowledge is by linking with other people. And you grow into their areas of knowledge and they grow into yours. So it's an interchange of sharing. There's fear as well, which comes from what will happen if I ask a question in an organizational setting. You know, will my boss like the fact that I'm challenging his decisions or the way where the process is working? So anyway, that's a bit of feedback.
You mentioned fear at least 4, if not more times. And I'm looking over at Patty. She talks about fear-based cultures being toxic to performance, to succeeding, about being competitive in the marketplace. And I think that digital leadership really entails de-escalating fear-based cultures. But I need to turn and ask Roy. Roy, sometimes we think about you know, that person's kind of dull. They're not asking questions, you know, like in a meeting or at a conference or something. It's like that person's just not asking questions. Are they just not curious? Are there reasons that people don't ask questions other than they're curious?
Well, I think that goes back, and it came up earlier, referring back to psychological safety. People often feel like there are stupid questions. Trust me, there are stupid questions. However, the key is not to make people feel stupid for asking them.
Yeah.
That's the key. And a lot of times people make people feel stupid for asking a question, or people innately feel stupid because they need to ask a question. They think they don't know the same as everybody else in the room knows, that type of thing. So people are afraid to ask questions. But sometimes it may be simply an individual preference where they don't want to ask the question right off the bat. They want to go back and do a little bit of research, learn a little bit more about it, and ask a more informed question later on. And there can be some ambiguity for the person who's winds up being asked the question. How does that person get to the question?
Yeah, I think there's I don't know if I want to say bias, but I think there's a a belief that people who are immediately visibly engaged in the conversation are probably more curious than somebody that sits back and ponders, and I don't believe that's true. I think.
What do you mean by that, Greg?
Well, I think that I think that people process information differently, and I think that that fear culture that multiple folks, Orion and Dee, had mentioned it earlier, and Patty's talked about it a lot. That comes in many forms. I mean, obviously, a manager who says you're fired, I don't like the way you think, that's fear-based culture. But there's also the why don't you have an opinion? I need to have your opinion right now. Get your opinion out here. It's a fear inflicting thing. It's like that person might have the answer. They might have brilliance, but we are contributing to creating it unfriendly for them to share what they really know. So, Patty, how do we help people become curious? How can we? And I'm thinking probably from the context of a leader, at least a manager supervising staff, but I'm thinking more like when I get up at the CEO level, how do I help people become more curious?
Okay, first I want to say, Kathy, you gave a master class in curiosity.
It's going to be in her book.
Yeah, that was fabulous. You know, people, environment, model it, reward it. You know, ask the right questions. That was amazing. I think when we talk about fear, I'm going back to, I'm just trying to remember the name. Beth Cantor did some research with Harvard Business Review a number of years ago, and they picked up 10 reasons why there's resistance within organizations. And the top one, it was pinned on by you, in that it was the fear of looking stupid. That's the biggest one. That is the biggest reason for resistance in an organization, flat out. That was number one of all 10 reasons. So, Orion, thank you. That was that was fabulous, because it's true. And I want you to think about the Super Bowl. Now, it just played out in the United States, great big football game. But the big thing about the football game is not the buzz to the game, it's the buzz to the ads to the game, right? It's all the ads that you see. And for 6 weeks prior to the football game, you're finding out who's got the ads, who's got the ad spots, and what are those ads going to be like. And you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars are poured into this because they know how to keep people curious. They know how to get people to that game. 70% of the people who watch the Super Bowl are not football fans. They're there for the halftime show and the 6-week buildup of ads. That's just my pulling numbers out of the air. It's not true, but it's a lot of people, right? So there's a guy by the name of George Lowenstein, who in 1994 wrote an article in the psychological bulletin called The Psychology of Curiosity. And marketing firms use this to a T. You have to give the right amount of information to get them to the gap. So there's an edge of the cliff. If they're going to be curious enough to see what's on the other cliff, on the other side, you've got to get them there. So that's the pull. But the thing is, in order to convert them, to get them through the gap, you can't seem too large. They have to believe they can do it, right? So this is the vision. So you're getting people to the gap. This is the vision. But let's use this example. Let's say Roy knows the state capitals out of 47 out of 50 states, okay? But Greg only knows 17. Roy is going to be more encouraged to learn the 3 more states than Greg is. Greg's going to be proud of himself because he's got 17. Man, I'm good. Look I know 17 states, but the gap is too large to have all 50. So Roy has curiosity to close the gap, right? But Greg might be less interested in doing so because he doesn't have anything there. For Roy, it's completion. I'm going to get this. I'm going to have this thing because I'm so close. But for Greg, it's I need to be encouraged as to why that even matters in my life. So you have to make sure the gap isn't too small. There's this massive buildup getting you to the gap. But the other thing that happens is if the reveal sucks, no one's going to go anywhere, right? So we do this in digital transformation. If we are good at the vision, if we lay that vision out and we're like, oh, this is going to be so awesome, this is going to be so awesome, we say, and we're doing the exact same thing with a new tool and nothing has changed, the reveal fell flat in its face. If it didn't make a difference for the vision, if it didn't get us, to where we had anticipated, then it's not, number one, it's not a transformation, but number two, it's going to fall flat. And organizations do this over and over and over again till we get oversaturated by these horrible reveals, right? Once we get there, it hasn't changed our job in a positive way. It hasn't made a difference. Now there's, I want you guys to follow this. It's called the Curiosity Lab. It's a fellow and his buddies in Tel Aviv University in Israel. It is amazing what they're doing right now. So they had a theory that they could bring psychological concepts, mathematical and computational frameworks together to create fast modular neurobiologically plausible action. So what they're doing is they're testing this robot with young children to see if the robot can elicit curiosity and counteract the quelling push that parents have done on kids to stop them from being curious and just get in line, right? And it's fabulous. They're implementing industrial grade platforms using that same curiosity framework. And they're testing these social robots in classrooms and they're getting some really, really good success. So I think the 3 steps are get them to the edge, make them want to hear about it. This is marketing 101, right? Give them the ability or support them to be able to feel like the gap is doable and exciting. And then when you get to the other side, make it worth their while.
Wow. You guys are on fire today. I'm going to just savor that. And I also appreciate the fact that you said things that I would normally be known for saying because you just wanted me to, stay quiet about it. Simone,
You've taken the heat for you, man.
I know. I deserve this. I recognize that I deserve this. But seriously, though, this might have to be a 2-parter because I don't know that we've played this whole curiosity thing out. But I want to touch back on leadership. Simone, why is curiosity always part of being a good leader? I mean, why can't you just say that's where we're going? Everybody get in line. Let's get to it. Why can't you just do that? Why do we have to?
I tried that. I tried that in my very first management role, and that was complete pancake. That was like, doing, hey, look, my roadkill. That just doesn't work, right? The whole command control thing that's not going to happen. Especially today. When Patty was talking about, how there's the big build up a lot of leaders do, and then when the reveal sucks. This is sometimes when I think that when Wonderland turned into reality. Once upon a time, a long time ago, there actually lived a young woman that wanted to lead the world. She did, by golly, but it was a world that didn't want her. It was a world that didn't want her kind. So what she had to do was create a way to live in that world until she learned how to create her own. And once she created to learn her own world, that's when she realized it was also one that others enjoyed being a part of, and that they could also become who they wanted to be. This is the lessons a leader learns and what makes the leader that becomes an adventurous life. It's getting out of one hotspot and into another. I think one of the greatest assets is hope. And it's a very interesting thing because hope, it's a quote from St. Augustine, hope has 2 beautiful daughters, anger and courage. And I mentioned courage earlier. in our talk that courage and curiosity are very deeply combined. There's an anger at the way things are, you know, and the reason I say anger versus, you know, oh God, I just don't like this and I'm a bit flat about it, is because anger actually has an energy. It builds us into it's a movement. And what happens is that there were points when I knew in my career, I knew in my life that if I stayed where I was, it was such a depressing grind. You know, it descended on me, this mundaneness. And I realized the only way out was actually to take a leap into another world. So you have to make that choice. Curiosity is finding dysfunctions. You mentioned it earlier when you talked about, well, why has never anyone asked this question about why it happens every Thursday or whatever? Curiousness actually spots the odd. It spots the uncommon or the unpattern, if you like. Think about an unpattern. What's actually out of kilter with this? Because you never really know where inspiration is going to come from. You really don't. And it's a cross-pollination. It's connecting to all the different things. It's walking in those other worlds that we've mentioned. It's wanting to see the outside world. So this courage and spirit of adventure, which is still very internal. See, I know I'm going to adapt because I adapted before. I know I'll survive it because I survived before. That's the resilience building. People think you can train resilience. You don't. You experience it. You go through it. You build your resilience in layers. And, you know, I know that that's going to happen because I've had people to look up to. You know, people I look forward to seeing, my cohorts, every Friday afternoon. And I keep chasing that really elusive being. And this is what a leader does. Who am I becoming? Because in like Alice Through the Looking Glass, she used to know who she was before she fell down the rabbit hole. And that's the riddle that we're trying to answer. Because, and I know this is one of Dee's favorites, because let's not forget, we're all mad here, as the Cheshire Cat says. You must be, or you wouldn't have come. And one of my favorite quotes from Paul Cello is, when you can't go back, you have to only worry about the best way of moving forward. So as a leader, it's developing that kind of ability that allows for deep conversations that matter in the context to whom we're interacting. It's got to be in the context of the other person. Being the quiet observer, Patty, Kathy, you've all mentioned these sorts of things. Being true to the intent and the wishes, and even unexpectedly at time, you will find that by going deeper, you will receive insights from and more solutions from the other person. The things that you can create will be amazing. So basically, curiosity for me helps me frame to see the world from multiple advantage points. This is what a leader needs to do. To think differently, you have to remain open to the experience. And in that creativity, this is the thing where the brain science comes in. This is where people don't get the whole emotional intelligence, emotional agility, and everything else, is that when we're in those neurons that haven't met before, because we put ourselves in a completely different context, they start to come into sync. Curiosity is a kinetic energy. It moves people. It moves you to improvements, new perspectives, ways of seeing things. So for a leader, it's increasing your receptivity. It's that sitting in the presence of creativity. I think it's that stimulus that brings the innovation, not just to who the leader is, but allowing that to happen in others and come forth.
So let's take a turn towards the very, very practical. I'm going to make a last question and make the rounds around the core four, and then we'll turn it over to Roy to finish it up. But Roy, I want to turn to you. Let's be practical. What are some things that I can do? And I don't mean Greg, I mean anybody that's listening, to be more curious. How do I stimulate myself or encourage myself or develop, nourish or encourage more curiosity in myself? Starts with me.
I don't know and I don't care.
Apathy is a good start, sure.
As apathy, I think apathy is the direct opposite of curiosity, right? Yeah. You have to care at least a little bit if you're going to be curious. So try to see what it is you care about, see what draws you in, be aware of the way that you like to learn about things, and be aware of those around you who support you in finding things out. Because there will be people around you who don't. They don't want you to know stuff, which is odd. Why wouldn't you? But that's how some people think.
Right.
Just keep on keeping on, as the old saying from the '60s goes. I remember this. Never mind. Just think about what it is that stimulates you to learn more, and be willing to go after those things. Not rocket science here.
Patty, same question.
Comfort kills curiosity. That's it. Stop being comfortable. Be passionate, have an interest in something. Dig deeper than the surface on that passion. Have an open mind. Keep your brain willing and receptive to change your ideas about that something. Master the new. So something you've never done, do that every week. Do something new. Change which hand you brush your teeth with. Everything that helps you gain curiosity. Get outside, walk. Shut your brain down from the digital devices and start taking in the sounds and the breath of nature. Do something different every week that scares you. Walk into enemy territory. The only way that you can be curious is if you embrace what the enemy you are judging actually believes about something. Ask yourself a million questions and ask them questions. Look up data, science articles. You're going to be surprised at what that changes in your brain. Like I said, get offline, explore the world, but explore the world differently. You know, doesn't matter if you're urban or rural, go to a different restaurant, order something different on the menu, get curious about why they're different, shop at a different clothing store. That's hard for people. And then the most important thing to learn is reflect. You need to reflect on everything you're learning as you're being curious, because no change happens till we actually are quiet enough to sit down and think about how that changes our worldview. And it's all about you. You are the only person who you have control over. And like Simone said, that was so beautifully said, fly your freak flag and get out there and be you, because it's you that will attract people, not the model you're designing to fit in with them.
Wow. You backed up the dump truck and loaded on this. Patty, I got to ask, can you post that on our website as a list?
Sure.
Because that's a lot. I was trying to take notes and I couldn't get to all of it. That's a wonderful list. Simone, that leaves you about 20 seconds before we wrap.
Oh, no worries. I've got one exercise for you to do, because it's for yourself. So you can scramble people to regroup. You can put them into different teams together. You know, you give them those lateral shifts in their relationship nexus and who they work with. That definitely does jumpstart things. But if you want to do it for yourself, I'll give you the one challenge, and it's what I call the shower exercise. If you automatically walk into a shower and you pick up the soap with the right hand and you're starting this part of your body and everything and that kind of stuff, do you know what? Do it with the other hand. All you want to do is make that one shift, and your brain is going to go into conniptions to start with. But I tell you what, that one kind of shift about actually trying to wash your body with the other hand, your brain is going to go, wow, what just happened? And it's going to give you a kickstart. And that's what I want to leave you. Kickstart it. Once you kickstart it, the journey is going to continue.
Love it. So, you know, maybe we should just like have somebody rap other than Roy. I mean, just that would be change the dynamics just a little bit. And I'll let Roy consider that as we come up on the hour. It's been a great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to throw this out for later discussion amongst yourselves. Perhaps the fact that I'm insatiably curious has to do with the fact that I'm ambidextrous.
Yeah.
So I do lots of things with either hand. Who knows? Do I? I don't know. Started out as a lefty, changed myself to a righty, use both of them now. Do some things right-handed, some things left-handed. Who cares? I don't want to know. I don't care, and I don't want to know. Okay, so we have discussed curiosity. I would like to thank everybody, the core four, of course, Greg, Simone, Patty, and Wah. I will thank myself. And Daniel, Orion, Kathy, D, thank you so much for being with us as regular or semi-regular participants in this enterprise. Folks from different places on the planet here. We like to get the international perspective. Life is good, different cultures, different locations. See, curiosity. This is what happens. And sometime we'll take some time and we'll explore the line between curiosity and interest. Maybe next time or the time after, we'll get there, okay? Have a great week. Thank you for being on KTLO, keeping the learning going that way. Okay, good.